Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to talk about one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood numbers in history. It's a number that has sparked literal centuries of debate, often pitting science and faith against each other. But what if the number at the heart of it all isn't even in the book it supposedly comes from?
Yep, 6,000. You've heard it, right? The idea that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and that the Bible says so. For a lot of people, this is a line in the sand kind of truth. For others, it's pretty much Exhibit A for why the whole text can't be trusted. It's become a huge cultural flashpoint. But here's the thing, and this is the key question. If you actually go and open the book of Genesis and you look for that verse, the one that says the Earth is 6,000 years old, well, you're going to be looking for a while because it's just not there. So if the text doesn't say it, where in the world did this number even come from? Let's find out.
To get to the bottom of this, we have to do a little detective work. And our trail doesn't start in ancient Israel. Nope. It starts in 17th century Ireland.
So meet the man behind the number, Archbishop James Ussher. Now, in the 1600s, this guy was a brilliant scholar, and he took on this massive project to write a complete history of the world, using the Bible as his main guide. He really focused in on the genealogies in Genesis, those long lists of names, because they mention how old these guys were when their sons were born.
Ussher's method was, pretty straightforward. He started with Adam, saw how old he was when Seth was born, then he took Seth's age when Enosh was born, and just kept going down the line. He treated it like a perfect, solid, unbroken chain of fathers and sons, just adding up all the years. And after all that math, he came up with a super specific date for creation, 4004 BC. It's a really precise calculation, but it all hangs on a single crucial assumption, and the translation of just one word.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the clue that kind of blows this whole thing open has been hiding in plain sight the whole time, right there in the original Hebrew text.
And here it is, this one little word, yalad. Now, in pretty much every English Bible, it gets translated as fathered or begat. And to us, that sounds like a direct father-to-son link. Simple. But the original Hebrew is, well, it's a lot more flexible. Yalad can mean he was the direct father, for sure, but it can also mean he was the ancestor of someone, maybe someone many, many generations down the line.
And this is the absolute game changer. Our English translation sort of forces us into this rigid, gapless timeline, but the original Hebrew, it allows for huge gaps. You gotta remember, ancient genealogies weren't like a modern census. Their goal was often to highlight the most important people in a lineage, not list every single person. So it's less like a detailed family tree and more like a greatest hits album of your most famous ancestors.
So, what does this little linguistic detail do to Ussher's neat and tidy 6,000-year timeline? Well, it basically introduces the possibility of massive, uncounted gaps.
So if Yalad can just mean ancestor of, the whole picture changes completely. The Genesis genealogies aren't meant to be this super detailed, unbroken chain. They're more like a curated list of the big names, and this means there could be dozens, maybe even hundreds of unmentioned generations just tucked away in between the famous names we all recognize.
Okay, so this is Archbishop Ussher's view. It's a solid, connected chain. Every link is right there. You add up the ages and boom. You land at around 6,000 years. It's clean, it's simple, and it's all based on that modern English understanding of the word fathered.
But once we factor in what the original Hebrew actually allows for, that neat little timeline stretches a lot. The chain isn't broken, the links are just way farther apart than we thought. All of a sudden, you have these gaps of totally unknown length between all the key figures. And if you don't know how long the gaps are, you can't calculate a total age. It becomes impossible. The total age is now just a giant question mark.
So let's just step back and put it all together. What is the text of Genesis actually claiming here? And just as importantly, what is it not claiming?
So on one hand, you've got Ussher's calculation. It's a mathematical conclusion from the 17th century, and it's based on the big assumption that there are no gaps. But on the other hand, you have the ancient text of Genesis itself, and it's a theological genealogy focused on faith and lineage, written in a language that absolutely allows for gaps. Ussher gives us a number. Genesis doesn't.
When you get right down to it, the purpose of the Genesis account was never to be a geology textbook. Its focus is theological. It's trying to make these huge claims about who the Creator is and what our relationship to that Creator is supposed to be. Someone put it perfectly. Genesis tells you who made the world. It doesn't give you a receipt with the date on it.
So that famous 6,000-year number, it's not actually something the book of Genesis ever says about itself. It's an interpretation, a really clever one, but an interpretation calculated thousands of years later, based on a specific reading of a translation. The original text seems way more concerned with these big, timeless questions of meaning and purpose than it is with giving us a specific calendar date. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. Does knowing that distinction change how you see the text?